Hey everyone, Rich Munroe with B&B Investing Group. Thanks for jumping on this week. Just as a reminder, B&B Investing Group helps short-term rental investors navigate the different models within short-term rentals, whether you're doing acquisitions, the arbitrage model, or if you're managing. And so I'm happy to have Tim Hubbard on with us today and talking about his story. Tim, thanks for taking some time and maybe give us a little bit of a background on how you got started with short-term rentals.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Happy to be here. Let's see, background on short-term rentals. So I've always enjoyed traveling a lot. So I guess in sort of a back-end way, I discovered short-term rentals through travels. I've been staying in Airbnb since they kind of started. But I've also been big on investing in real estate. So I started about 15 years ago, just investing in long-term rentals. And somewhere along the line, I was looking for investments in new cities, new states. And so I was sort of traveling around the US, and I was staying in a short-term rental while I was looking to acquire some long-term rentals. And I looked up how much the purchase price was for the property I was staying. I knew how much I was paying there. And I sort of weighed those returns against the ones that I was looking to acquire. And they were much better, right? This was back in the day. And so from that moment, I started focusing on short-term rentals. I luckily had quite a few already in my portfolio that sort of fit well for short-term rentals. They're in desirable areas. And so I started converting some of those over. It went well. And then I just kind of kept doing that. So it's been quite a journey, but it's been a good one.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of had a similar upbringing. I mean, I started with the long-term rentals and very quickly got burnt out from, even though I would outsource to property managers, having to evict people right before the holidays and then having to rehab the properties again and looking at the numbers, just not making a whole lot of sense. And so for me, it was the same. It was kind of like a light bulb moment when you can make 2 to 3 times the revenue on the same asset without all the damage to the property. So definitely similar background there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, years later, I'm actually down here in South America. So I ended up moving out of the US 8 years ago, I guess. I was traveling to Colombia a lot and I really liked it. And, somewhere along the line, I ended up in Brazil, and then I met a special lady in Brazil. So now I'm in both of them. But I still live down here. We spend all of our time, for the most part, in South America. And we've been managing properties remotely. So we've figured out those virtual operations. Really, I was growing my portfolio. I was growing my team over the years, learning, adapting to the new tools. Seems like we have a new tool every day. And really figured out how to manage my properties comfortably. And then we started managing other people's properties last year, which has been a fun journey as well.
All right, very cool. So you have been managing your own properties remotely since you moved as well, and then you've added on managing others. So which town did you get started in the beginning?
Yeah, I'm from California, Sacramento, and that's where I started. Yeah, I used to work as a commercial investment broker, actually. So we worked with, it was really, really good experience. We worked with apartment buildings, shopping centers. We only worked with investors. So I was doing a lot of the underwriting and kind of in between a lot of the deals. I got to learn a lot, but it was an office job, and the path to success as a commercial broker can take quite a long time. And I was already doing pretty well with my personal portfolio. So I ended up not doing that anymore and just focusing on the short-term rentals. That was really a huge, at that time, having the properties and switching them over to short-term rentals, just made me financially free pretty much, so I focused on that. But I guess during that time as well, or after college, I worked for a software company for a long time, about 8 years as an independent contractor, as I was building the real estate portfolio. And that was a lot of really good experience too. I worked with mechanics, automotive shops, and I was in sales. And so I was working with all different types of automotive shops, and I sold software. It was business management software. It helped them manage their clients, similar to how we use a property management software platform for short-term rentals. It's kind of like the same thing for automotive shops. But I really got into software, and what I realized from all of the, hundreds or thousands of businesses that I worked with over the years is that those businesses that really took advantage of our software, they were less stressed, their clients were happier, they made more money. And so I've really adapted, I'm a big fan of software, I guess you could say. And I'm always trying new things, maybe more than I should. I know our teams sometimes is like, we don't want to use another software program. But we use a lot of software programs. I still do. And luckily in this industry, we have way more options than we did in the past. So managing virtually is a lot more easy than it was in the past.
Yeah, for sure. So how many properties did you have when you started in Sacramento?
When I started in Sacramento, I guess by the time I left Sacramento, I had like 12 units. So they were in good spots though. They were like downtown, you could walk to restaurants and cafes and stuff like that. So I ended up selling all but 4 of those. So I just have 4 units left there. And did some 1031 exchanges out into some other cities, bought some small multifamily properties, like between 6 and 12 units, and bought them as long-term rentals, but with the intention to convert them into short-term rentals. They were in areas that I also thought were good and sort of ripe for short-term rentals. Again, like in the same kind of area where you can walk to restaurants and stuff. And so I did quite a few renovation projects, and converted a lot of those over and still operating them today. And it's, I'm glad I'm not doing any more renovation projects. So I know a lot of people out there, they get really good at it, and they can nail it down, but that's where my gray hair came from, like 100%.
Same here. I very rarely do rehabs. The last one we did was a huge lake house project that was like most rehabs that have all kinds of surprises every turn and every corner. But I don't look to do those anytime soon as well. It's just it's a lot of stress for sure.
It is.
Yeah. So what got you comfortable? A lot of investors have a hard time investing and operating in other cities that they're not, residing in. How did you kind of gravitate to that and be comfortable with not only that, but then also leaving the U.S. altogether and still managing some of those properties?
Yeah, good question. I think it probably started with me just traveling for extended periods of time. So even while I was living in California, I was still working pretty remotely, even in this contracting position with the software companies. And so I wasn't there to manage those properties, and sort of learned a few systems, learned to work with people, started slowly building a team. And then once I left California, I really was just looking for the best returns, so I kind of already been managing virtually on those extended trips, long enough to know that I don't need to be there anymore. And the thing that I sort of realized is if you can't drive to your property anymore, or, even if it takes an hour, and in the short-term rental world, sometimes an hour is too long. Right.
Yeah.
And so if you can't drive to the property anymore, there's not really a big difference between living an hour away from a property or living 4,000 miles away from a property. It's the same, if you're not going to be there to do that. So I think I had that mindset going into the other cities. And I actually lived in Tennessee for a little while, about a year, while I was getting into the investments there, learning the market and dealing with these rehabs. And yeah, after Tennessee, I ended up leaving the US. I say leaving, I mean, I'm still a US citizen and my family still lives here, and I still come back to the US and I go to conferences and do all that. But I just enjoyed the culture. I enjoy the culture a little more, I think, in South America. At times, that every place has its pros and cons. But yeah, so I guess it's been a bit of a journey, but in a nutshell, living too far away from a property and living on the other side of the planet, it's not that much different to me, I guess.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, especially if you kind of have the discipline in the beginning, even when you're near the property. If something, you're making sure that you delegate the right tasks so that you're not the one doing it, and just kind of get in the habit of doing that, so you don't have to physically be the one that does a lot of the day-to-day operation. So how did you kind of gravitate to? Are you still growing in the U.S.? Are you still adding more units? What's the kind of your scope going forward?
Yeah. I haven't purchased anything in the US in probably over 2 years now. So I am working on a development down here in Colombia, ground up. So I say I'm like done with renovations now. I'm getting into development. I sound like a hypocrite, but it's I've got a partner on this, and he's done construction before. So we've got some good experience behind us.
Yeah, new construction is a little bit less. There's less surprises with new construction compared to rehabbing, right? So
yeah, you don't open the wall and find knob and tube or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
So, yeah. So I haven't acquired anything in the U.S. in quite a while. I would like to, but I've kind of got my hands full with this project down here. And, interest rates have gone up. So this, single family or up to 4 units, it's hard for those to cash flow like it was a few years ago. There's obviously still lots of opportunity. We see it all the time. But I haven't been super focused on that. I think when I do dip back into the US, it's going to be in the multifamily space again. Like we've seen that come down drastically just in the last couple of years, maybe 30% or so across the board, right? So that's where I will be looking. Yeah, probably smaller multifamily properties again, where I can convert them into short-term rentals, or even take an existing property that's maybe already operating as short-term rentals, but not operating really efficiently. I think that's probably what I'll be looking for.
Nice. And so your development in Colombia, what's the game plan with it? What type of property is it? What's the size? And ultimately, I guess the end game is to set it up as a short-term rental once it's finished.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're going to be individual units. So 17's the plan. There will be full site staff there, so it'll be kind of like a hotel type setup. We're going to have a restaurant. It's a really cool lot. It's a little over 2 acres, but it's within the city, which is, Medellin has over 4 million people in the city where I'm at. It's very dense. Like it's very dense. And so I'm living right now in a high-rise building. I'm on the 16th floor or something like that. And so my partner, who's lived here pretty much straight through for the last 10 years, found the lot. And he's already got a couple other projects going. We've been friends for quite a while, and he asked if I wanted to partner up on them, and I said yeah. And so we're excited about it. It's a really cool lot. It's hard to find lots in Medellin that are within the city. It's got amazing view, and I think the market dynamics are really good for short-term rentals in where we're at, because there's a lot of regulations. Like a lot of these buildings are high-rise buildings where, you've got Colombians that have been living here for years. They don't want to be living next to guests coming in for a couple nights. And so they've restricted things a lot. And there's since I started coming down here in 2015, and it's so much different than it was. I mean, it's 2024, 9 years ago. It's way different. And the amount of foreigners coming down here, I mean, it's only 3 hours from Miami. The cost of living is way lower. They call it the city of eternal spring because the temperature hardly fluctuates away from 74 degrees. So there's a lot going for it. But there's a lot of challenges in Colombia too. The infrastructure's much different than it is in the US. Before we jumped on, I mentioned we actually signed on this lot over 2 years ago. And so we've been working on the planning and stuff for a really long time, but it's got a lot of potential. So I'm excited about it.
So you can't even escape the stringent short-term rental regulations, even when you go outside of the country. Then, so how are you getting around that with your new development? Is it in an area where it's not restricted, or is it only in the high-rise buildings that it's prevented?
So you'd actually be surprised. Their zoning here is pretty well mapped out. You can pull up a lot on the computer and you can see the zoning rights and zoning permissions, just like you could in the US. This particular lot was zoned to agricultural, but it had a commercial license when we bought it. And so our idea was to modify the existing commercial license, which turned into a big, fiasco, but we did manage to modify it. So we have a commercial license, which allows us to rent without any restrictions, just similar to like a hotel license.
Okay. Very cool. And what's the, there was 17 units you're doing? And
that's the plan. Yeah.
What's the average projected nightly rate and occupancy and revenue that's going to be generated from those?
Yeah. So the units are roughly 600 square feet. They're like individual cabins, but we've designed them for people to be able to live there for like an extended stay. A lot of people come down and they end up staying month after month. So they'll have laundry, they'll have kitchenettes. You can take Uber, you can order Uber Eats, all that stuff. So it depends. Like for me as an operator, like I would love just to have the longer stays at basically the same rate, month in and month out. But the reality is a lot of people come down here, the average just to visit. So the average stay is probably going to be like around 3 days, something like that. And there's a huge variation in prices down here. So I think this property is going to be unique. Like there's not a lot of properties like it. And so I'm not 100% certain where that number is going to end up falling. Of course, when we have better reviews, we'll be able to earn more. But I'm thinking at a minimum, they're going to be earning like around 175 a night, and maybe up to $250 to $300 a night. Occupancy, probably around like 60 to 70%. Sort of projected.
That's pretty strong.
And
that's pretty strong.
Yeah. Good news for new construction down here is that the labor is much less than it is in the US. Materials are pretty, they're not too much different than the US. They're pretty expensive as well, but we should be able to build each of these units. Well, we really have 3 phases. When we first did the designs, we've been going through this for like 2 years, so we've changed things up a bit. Actually, the initial plans, my partner and I were going to like reserve part of the lot to build like our dream homes on it. And that got scratched, so we went through all those plans and everything. And then we had three designs that are different. The lot's big enough to where we can sort of separate them out. And so this first design is going to be our least expensive. We want to test things out. We're expecting to build each one of these cabins for like 40 to 50,000. So wow. They're going to have pretty good return. Our other 2 phases are much more expensive to build. They're more of like there's a lot more structural stuff going on there. But this initial phase, we're hoping, to get numbers around that.
Nice. What type of construction is it going to be? Like modern or log cabin type, or what's the theme of it?
Yeah, a bit of a blend between modern and like glamping. So our architect that's helped us out, he built another project in a city not too far from here called Guatapé. Really, really beautiful place, like surrounded by a bunch of lakes. And they went the full glamping route there. They've got like the glass domes. And so he's sort of specialized in these tarp type ceilings. But they look really modern, and they're not like a circle glamping type of a roof that you see normally. Like they're stretched out and they've got like poles, tightening them down in certain places, but it's also fully enclosed. So like there's no way for bugs or anything to get in. And so that's sort of the design. It's like a modern interior with like brick walls, with stucco over them, and then like this sort of floating, glamping modern roof style.
Okay, very cool. So now that you've got like the permitting and stuff behind you, how long do you think it's going to take for the construction portion?
Geez, in Colombian time or in US time?
Yeah,
Colombians would say 4 months, but
yeah,
I pretty much double everything. So our architect thinks that we can get like the first 6 done in like 4 to 6 months. Actually, he said 4, but I'm I'm going to give it like 8 months or so. The nice thing is that this first phase is pretty light construction. I mean, it's steel supports, like wood decking. They're not really big. So, and he's going to be managing that whole process. He's built quite a few projects before, and so they've got the contacts, and he's been around for a while. My partner's used him on other projects, so I'm hoping it goes as I'll be if we get them done in the next year, I'll be okay with it, Rich. That's
yeah. I mean, if it's anything like the Caribbean, it's everybody is kind of on their own timeline. It's very different than in the States. It's not as hurry up and go. Yeah. So I can certainly relate to that. So let's touch a little bit on your management business, because you're doing a little bit of a kind of a remote management that's different than a full management service, which is probably pretty. You've got a pretty good niche right now, because a lot of the owners and a lot of the operators are kind of looking at slowdowns in occupancy and revenue and looking to cut corners anywhere they can. And so I would imagine you're charging a lower management fee as well for the services that you guys provide. Tell me a little bit about how that's structured.
Yeah. So we essentially structured the same way that we did for my personal portfolio. So we use the same team that we do with my properties that get managed alongside our partners. And I've been living far away, so there's things that have been more challenging, hiring housekeepers, for example. But the coordinating, all that, like, we really figured that out. So the way we work now is the same way we do with my properties. We're fully virtual. We work with someone that has a contact on the ground. We do all the coordination. We do all the marketing. We do all the revenue management, all the guest reception, and so it's a bit of a partnership. They're all partners. We've also started working with boutique hotels recently. Actually, I had a COO invest in the company within the last few months. It's been really exciting. He built a boutique hotel down here, and we helped him really raise his revenue. So he joined us. He invested quite a bit of money, and we're also focusing on other boutique hotels, but that are in sort of that inefficient space. They're somewhere like around 15, 20 units. They don't have enough money to hire a revenue manager, to hire, a big team to handle all the pieces. They maybe don't want to, or, they don't like all the software pieces that go into it. And so we're working with other boutique hotels now, which is really exciting. We're bringing one on Costa Rica as well. Again, it's virtual. And so we're working with the teams that are already in place. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Very cool. So what's for our management business, we charge like a full 25%. What's your percentage of management fee structure look like?
Yeah, we charge 10%. Okay. And then we have a software fee per month, but it's minimal.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so what's your client size right now in that business?
We're in total, we've got around 125 properties. And yeah, most of them, I would say, we've got a mix. So we have some luxury high-end properties. We have a lot of my smaller multifamily properties. We have four small boutique hotels. So it's a bit of a mix, but it's been working well. It's been working well across the board. So good feedback, and we're excited to keep it going.
Very cool. Yeah, I like the diversity as well of the different property types, just so you're not latching on to one particular market or one particular property. So that's pretty cool that you're looking at boutique hotels as well. So you also do a podcast. Let's touch a little bit on that.
Yeah. Podcast called Short-Term Rental Riches, and I started that about 5 years ago. I think just recorded episode 255. Originally, I started, a lot of friends were asking, I had left the US, and they're like, how are you managing and acquiring all these properties, and you don't live here? And, so I sort of started as a way to answer a lot of questions just in a very efficient way. They were the most common questions, like, where do I find a property? How do I, all that type of stuff. And so, yeah, the podcast has really been a lot of fun. I ended up teaching for a while, and we would do live events. And so I'd fly in to Memphis, where I had most of my portfolio. We'd rent like a big tour bus and go through my properties and just show them exactly how I was doing everything. And then I'd go back across the border. So I did that for a while. I've since switched and just focused on the management, which has been really, really exciting, but still doing the podcast every week. The idea is quick, actionable tips for anyone operating a short-term rental or interested in operating a short-term rental.
All right, very cool. So I'll throw out your website on the comments so everybody can have access to it. And so what's the future look like for Midtown Stays?
Yeah, we're actually changing our name. That's the first one, because we're not just operating in Midtown places anymore. But yeah, as I mentioned, I just had a CEO join. We're hiring a lot of people. We've been hiring a lot of people out of Eastern Europe. Most of them have been really good. We still have a lot of our team members in Philippines. We've got some really great members there, and in South America. So we're looking to expand. We are focusing on boutique hotels, but we're all across the board. So we've got large luxury homes, and we've got inner urban city apartments, and we know how to operate them all. We're owner operators, and we're bringing on other owners alongside of us. So it's kind of the future we want to scale and get better and better.
Very cool. That's awesome. So as we close up here, what's one piece of advice you would give somebody that's getting started in this business and wants to kind of focus on management in particular? What would you tell somebody that, from what you've learned, that would be important for them to know about?
To focus on, if they wanted to focus on management, well, it's helpful to have the experience, So if you have a property already and you're already managing your own property, I think that's a really good place to start, right? If we want to start a management business, but we've never managed short-term rentals, it's going to be a little more challenging. So assuming someone already has a bit of management experience, I would say, finding the right team members. Like, this is a tough business, and we can't do it alone. And so, even just making that first hire, a lot of times, we always hear everyone say, like, I wish I would have hired someone sooner. And that really is reality. And so I think, if you're looking to get in the business, find some good help. Of course, we can do that virtually now, so the costs don't have to be extreme, but get in some experience and I guess taking it slow, like figuring out what you're doing before you overextend yourself. That doesn't work with property management. Like, you overextend yourself, you have unhappy guests, you have unhappy owners, and then the whole thing comes crumbling down. So
it's a pretty quick downward spiral from there, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, that's very good advice. I really appreciate you taking the time today, Tim. Thanks so much. And maybe we'll have you back when you're completed with your development project down there in Colombia.
Yeah, 2035.
Hopefully it doesn't take that long.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope not. Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody, for watching us this week. And as a reminder, if you're looking to grow a scalable short-term rental business and you'd like to get some help on that, shoot me on Facebook Messenger. We'll have a quick chat and see if this is a good fit for you to help you grow in short-term rentals. So, Tim, thanks again, bud. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next week.